I couldn't see the man's face. The headlights were too bright, and the distance was too far. But I could see enough. He wasn't moving. He wasn't hiding. He was standing in the middle of the road at 2:30 in the morning, staring directly at our tent. And the strangest part wasn't that he was there. It was that the sheriff had warned us about him 6 hours earlier. Before we proceed, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This happened during the summer of 2019. My daughter Emily had just turned 17, and before she left for college the following year, I wanted to spend some real time with her. Not the kind of time where you're both sitting in the same room staring at different screens. I wanted one last adventure. We decided on a weekend camping trip in western Montana. The place wasn't a major campground. It was one of those lesser-known spots tucked away inside national forest land. A friend from work had recommended it years earlier. According to him, it was quiet, scenic, and rarely crowded. That sounded perfect. We arrived just after noon on a Friday. The drive-in was beautiful. Pine-covered hills stretched for miles in every direction. The nearest town was over 40 minutes away, and by the time we reached the campground, cell service had completely disappeared. There were only 3 occupied campsites. One older couple parked near the lake, a family with a small camper, and us. The campground itself sat beside a narrow lake surrounded by thick forest. Everything looked peaceful. We spent most of the afternoon setting up camp, fishing from the shoreline, and talking about life. Honestly, it was one of the best days I'd had in years. Around 5 in the evening, a sheriff's SUV rolled into the campground. At first, I didn't think much of it. Small campgrounds get routine patrols all the time. The vehicle moved slowly between the campsites before eventually stopping near ours. The sheriff stepped out. He looked to be in his late 50s. Friendly enough. He greeted us, asked how long we planned on staying, and made a little small talk. Then his expression changed. He glanced toward the woods. Not directly at anything, just toward the trees. Then he asked, "You folks staying the night?" I laughed and said that was generally how camping worked. He smiled politely, but didn't laugh. Instead, he nodded slowly. Then he said something strange. "Keep your fire burning tonight." I waited for him to explain. He didn't. A few seconds passed. Finally, I asked why. The sheriff looked back toward the woods again. Then he shrugged. Just good advice. After that, he climbed back into his SUV and drove away. Emily immediately started joking about it. She said maybe there were bears, or mountain lions, or maybe the sheriff was trying to scare tourists. I laughed along with her, but something about the conversation felt odd. Not frightening, just odd. As the afternoon turned into evening, we decided to explore one of the old service roads that branched off near the lake. The road hadn't been maintained in years. Grass was growing through the gravel. Trees crowded both sides. About 15 minutes into our walk, we found something unexpected. An old pickup truck. It sat partially hidden among the trees. The vehicle looked abandoned. Rust covered most of the body. One tire was completely flat. The windshield had a large crack running across it. What caught my attention wasn't the truck itself. It was the fact that it looked like it had been there for a very long time. Years. Maybe longer. Emily asked why someone would leave a vehicle all the way out there. I didn't have an answer. We walked around it briefly and continued on. By the time we returned to camp, the sun was beginning to set. The older couple had left. The family with the camper was gone too. Now we were alone. Completely alone. At least that's what we thought. After dinner, we sat around the campfire talking. The sky was clear. The lake reflected the moonlight. Everything felt calm again. Then Emily suddenly stopped talking. She was staring across the water. I followed her gaze. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I noticed a figure standing on the opposite shoreline. The person was too far away to identify. All I could make out was a dark silhouette. The figure wasn't moving, just standing there, watching. I assumed it was another camper, maybe somebody fishing. But after nearly 10 minutes, the person hadn't moved an inch. Not once. Eventually, I stood up and waved. No response. The figure remained motionless. A few minutes later, I looked away to add wood to the fire. When I looked back, the figure was gone. Just gone. No flashlight. No movement. Nothing. Emily and I joked about it, but neither of us seemed completely comfortable anymore. Around 10 o'clock, we decided to turn in for the night. The fire was still burning when we crawled into the tent. For the first hour, everything was quiet. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They weren't close. Not yet, but they were definitely there. I held my breath and listened. The footsteps continued for maybe 20 seconds. Then stopped. Silence. I waited. Nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself it was an animal. A deer, perhaps. Then I drifted back to sleep. I woke again sometime later. The footsteps had returned. Only this time they sounded closer. Much closer. The strange thing was the pattern. Whoever was out there would walk for a few seconds. Stop. Wait. Then walk again. It felt deliberate, like they were trying not to be noticed. I checked my watch. 1:37 a.m. The campfire outside had nearly burned out. The forest had become completely dark. And then everything went silent again. No wind. No insects. Nothing. That's when Emily whispered, "Dad." I turned toward her. She sounded terrified. "What?" There was a pause. Then she said, "I think somebody's outside." Instantly, every nerve in my body lit up. I listened. At first I heard nothing. Then came a faint sound. A footstep, directly outside the tent. Not 20 yards away. Not 10. Right outside. My heart started pounding. I reached for the flashlight. The sound stopped. We sat frozen, waiting. Minutes passed. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. Then suddenly a branch snapped somewhere nearby, and whoever had been standing outside moved away. Fast. Very fast. The footsteps disappeared into the darkness. I wanted to believe it was an animal. But animals don't stand silently beside tents. At least not like that. Neither of us slept much after that. Around 2:30 in the morning, I finally decided to start the truck and recharge my phone. Mostly because I wanted some light. I grabbed the keys and stepped outside. The campground looked empty. Then I noticed movement. Someone was standing in the road, about 80 yards away, watching us. The same height, the same shape, the same motionless posture as the figure by the lake. I immediately unlocked the truck and switched on the headlights. The beams flooded the road. The figure didn't move. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then the person took a step forward. Slowly, calmly, not aggressive, not frightened, just deliberate. The light hit his clothing, and what I saw made absolutely no sense. The man appeared to be wearing an old maintenance uniform. Dark wear pants, a faded work shirt, reflective strips, the kind of uniform a park employee might wear. Except it looked decades old, dirty, weathered, almost rotting. The man stopped, then smiled. I couldn't make out every detail of his face, but I could see the smile, and it wasn't friendly. Without saying a word, he turned and walked into the woods. Not hurried, not running, just walked away. I stood there for another minute trying to process what I'd seen. Then I got back inside the truck and locked the doors. Neither Emily nor I slept for the remainder of the night. As soon as daylight arrived, we started packing. While loading our gear, we saw the sheriff's SUV returning. He parked beside our campsite and rolled down his window. I walked over immediately. Before I could say anything, he asked, "Everything all right?" I told him about the figure, the lake, the footsteps, the road, the uniform, the smile. The sheriff listened without interrupting. But when I mentioned the uniform, his expression changed. He became very quiet. Finally, he asked, "What did it look like?" I described it as best I could. The sheriff stared at the ground for several seconds. Then he sighed. Apparently, more than 20 years earlier, a maintenance worker assigned to that area had disappeared. One morning his truck was discovered abandoned near an old service road. The same road where Emily and I had found the rusted pickup. Search teams looked for him for weeks. They never found a trace. No body. No evidence. Nothing. Officially, he was listed as missing. The sheriff wouldn't say much more. Maybe because he didn't want to scare us. Maybe because he didn't know. But before leaving, he said something I'll never forget. He looked toward the woods and said, "You're lucky he only watched you." Then he drove away. Emily and I packed the last of our gear and left immediately. To this day, I don't know who or what we saw that night. Maybe it was a real person. Maybe it was someone living deep in the forest. Maybe it was something else entirely. All I know is this. I've spent decades camping in some very remote places. ive encountered bears, mountain lions, storms, and all kinds of strange situations. But nothing has ever unsettled me more than seeing that silent figure standing in the headlights, waiting, watching, as if he'd been expecting us all along. And if I ever return to Montana, I can promise you one thing. I won't be spending the night there. But what do you think? Who or what was standing in that road that night? Was it simply a stranger living deep in the forest? Or was there something more to the disappearance the sheriff mentioned? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. I read every single one, and I genuinely love to hear your theories. And if you enjoyed tonight's story, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us grow and allows us to bring you more true and terrifying camping encounters just like this one. As always, thank you for spending part of your evening with us. Stay safe out there. And remember, some places are abandoned for a reason. Good night.